Jiva Korja, hello everybody. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, or if you're watching a recording of this chat, welcome to another Fireside Chat. This is number 78, where I am in conversation with a member of the Order of Bards, Ovates and Druids. But I would like to start with my usual prayer for peace, as it's 8 p.m. So this is a poem by John O'Donoghue from his book Benedictus. As the fever of day calms towards twilight, may all that is strained in us come to ease. We pray for all who suffered violence today. May an unexpected serenity surprise them. For those who risk their lives each day for peace, may their hearts glimpse providence at the heart of history. That those who make riches from violence and war might hear in their dreams the cries of the lost. That we might see through our fear of each other a new vision to heal our fatal attraction to aggression. That those who enjoy the privilege of peace might not forget their tormented brothers and sisters. That the wolf might lie down with the lamb, and that our swords be beaten into plowshares. And no hurt or harm be done anywhere along the holy mountain. So just let me know where you're from. Cliff Carr from your garden. Lovely. Alton, Illinois, New York, Southern France, Canada, Italia, London, Abruzzo. Lovely to see you all. Washington, that's great. Anyway, it's County Meath, great. Utah, nice to see a few Irish people here. Finally, sunny London. Julia, you must be happy. It's a bit dull today, but we're expecting rain tomorrow, but at least it's warm. And Michelle is celebrating her 50th birthday from Maine. Happy birthday, Michelle. That's lovely. Tipperary, Ulster, Germany, Cornwall, Sweden, Northampton, Arlington, USA. Brilliant. Anyway, you're all very, very welcome. And Bealtaine blessings to you all. Bealtaine lasts for a whole month, the whole month of May here in Ireland. It actually is the Irish word for the month of May. Philip is in bed with bronchitis. I hope you're well soon and recover. And Sherry from West Donegal, wild West Donegal, bless you. Anyway, we're going to Berlin this evening, and I'd like to introduce you to my guest this evening is Björn Wertheimer. Björn, you're so welcome.
Hello, thanks Eimear for the invitation. Michelle, also from me, happy birthday. And bienvenido, buonasera, welcome, hello, whatever in all languages to all the world. I'm very excited and a bit overwhelmed by so much interest. Yes, welcome and hello from Berlin.
So, you are in Berlin, so tell us a little bit about what Berlin is like and where you live.
Well, first of all, it is like all big cities, very, very big. You have everything from the golden, shiny glass skyscrapers to the worst slums you can imagine. I have the great favor and great luck to live in a suburb in the very, very west of Berlin, Spandau, which as an outskirt is very green. We have a large forest going out to the Brandenburg area. We have the Havel Lake running through our area. So it's more like a little city, a small village, something in between, separated by the river from the bad Moloch Berlin. So there is this joke that in the evening when the sun goes down, the bridges all go up, so no people from Berlin can enter to Spandau. So we are part of Berlin and we are not part of Berlin, something in between, which is quite good.
Lovely. So you're what brought you to Druidry?
Good question. What I guess the first thing that brought me to Druidry was growing up as a child at the Baltic Sea with my mom and my grandparents. being there wandering through the dunes, having my mother telling me about the herbs and plants growing on the dunes. And if you have a bad throat, then you take this and make a tea out of it, and then you take this and this. I couldn't even remember the names. I remembered, oh yeah, this little white plant is good in the tea, this little green plant is good as something. And then my uncle died when I was 14. I grew up without my father, and this was a big shock. And it took me out of this innocent teenage
Mhm.
being just thinking about or from one day to another. And I asked myself some questions. And I found in the library of my mom a book written by Ross Nichols.
Ah,
I was 14. I tried to understand what was written in it. And I figured out, okay, in 30 or 50 years, you will try again. This is something for old men. And then I just traveled around on a spiritual search. And there is uh, the big luck to live in a big city. You have everything from a
mhm.
Buddhist temple to Catholic churches to weird witches, caverns. And I just started to drop around. I learned to meditate in the Buddhist temple, but I found out, well, Buddhism isn't so much my thing. I met some Hare Krishnas, which was really interesting. And since this day, I really know how to cook vegetarian, or since this time, but it also wasn't quite what I was searching for. And so I was always reading, looking. And when I met my wife, I told her, well, I'm something of a pagan, and I would say, with my connections to trees and into nature, I'm some kind of a druid. And there is this druid order, and one day when I'm old, I will join it. And then I had a birthday, and her birthday present was the introductory package. And I was like, okay, now this is the kick in the butt you need. Now you really start with it. And then we went some month later, 1 month later, we went to Glastonbury for our honeymoon. It was the first weekend of June. And we had this weird plan in our head. Maybe we will meet a druid there. We won't know how to identify a druid, but maybe we will meet one there. And our hotel, our honeymoon hotel, was the G&P, the Georgian Pilgrims.
Welcome, Pilgrim.
So everyone familiar with Glastonbury will laugh out loud now. We were at the perfect spot at the perfect time. It took us, I guess, 24 hours to meet our first druid. Yeah, and then it all started. And that's 7 years ago now.
A wonderful story. Beautiful. So, um, you're living in a city. So, and I know mentioned earlier, you describe yourself as an urban druid. What is it, or can you speak about urban druidry? And because I know, imagine many of our viewers live in cities, and I live in the country, and I just say I just love being out. It's just there. I'm looking at my garden right now. I just step out into nature. So, what is it like as an urban druid, and how do you how does it work for you?
To be honest, I never heard the word urban druid before I really got into working with other pagan groups, and especially with pagans living in the countryside. They always told me, how do you want to work in a pagan way, in a shamanic way, in a druid way, in a city of glass skyscrapers and slums? Then I thought about it, and it occurred to me all metropolitan areas, all big cities,
Mhm.
have their roots in very old settlements. Before, I never thought about it. As I said, I live here
Hey,
in Spandau for years now, for decades. I always had a forest right across the street, so to say. There is a big castle dating back from its origins to 1000 something in its state now. It's from 1500. So I always had, and I'm very into history, so I always knew there is this connection to history. And where would people have celebrated feasts, prayed to gods for more or for longer time than in the
Mhm.
first settlements? They wouldn't have walked out of their tiny village into the forest where the bear, the wolf, and the I don't know what live to make a ritual there. No, they made it in their settlements. They made it here. When we go to the old city or old town, nearly every big city has an old town. Go there. Look for the oldest graves, for the
Mhm.
oldest stones. You will find most cities, Paris, Barcelona, London, Berlin, they all have a river crossing, at least one river. Why? Because rivers were eternal to life. And also the people, of course, pray to the rivers, to the river goddesses.
Mhm.
So just go down to the river. Even if this river doesn't look like a river anymore, and it's a canal now, but it's still the same river. It's a river where for thousands of years people went down to pray. So urban Druidry to me, first of all, is finding the connection to this very ancient part of history. Where do you come from?
Mhm.
And by this, just hand in hand, you will get your connection to the ancestors. You will find out how the land looked like 1,000 years ago. And you will see the pole holes in the plaster if you have a nice archaeologist living in the city. Or you will see some markings where the old town wall was.
Mhm.
Um, it's very easy, I think, to get into the connection to the old and ancient history. And when you have this connection, then you will find the oldest tree in your city. And you will find this little tiny space where the river is as it was before.
Mhm.
And you will find step by step more into the history of your place. And to me, nowadays, I would say it's easier to find 1,000-year-old history in a big city than in a tiny village in the countryside.
Wow.
And then the next thing is, how do you want to influence the city? You, as a citizen, you are a vital part. You are one of the cells of the body of the city. So, what do you give your body? In every city, you have houses that were demolished,
Mhm.
and for years, nothing will happen on this little space. Go there with some seed bombs. Go there by night with a shovel and create a garden with some friends. Be the revolutionary in your city. And by this, you can get other people into it because they will like the idea that strawberries and tomatoes are growing just across the street. And then they will take this idea and go on with this idea, like a pyramid system, a snowball system, but in a positive way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and by this, you can change your city. Join citizens' movements for lowering the speed level or the speed limit in your street by saying, hey, we have a kindergarten there, we have a school there. Can't we have some street bumpers? Why do people rush with the 50 kilometers through our living area? Let's put it down to 30 kilometers. It's very easy to get into these movements. You just have to want to.
It's beautiful. There's a question, you may have answered it, but from Blake. I lived in Boston, Massachusetts for 3 years. Parks with green space were a godsend. Were a godsend. For you, what are your ways of connecting with the natural world in Britain? In Berlin, sorry. My bad writing. My bad reading, not my bad writing.
I can do it on every occasion. You have trees in the streets. and you will see those trees. They aren't those healthy trees you know from the forest. Go to the trees and help them. Just by
Mhm.
watering them, by fertilizing them. You will see crows in the streets. At night, you can see a fox running down the street. Open your eyes and you will see nature in the streets of a big city. We even have wild boars in the wintertime. As I said, we live in a suburb, coming from the forests into the streets to search for
Oh,
search for rubbish. So by chance, you can have a wild boar at night standing in front of your door. Um,
wonderful.
Search for the tiny places, and you will find them. And you can find it in a street cat just lying in the sun, and then just get into the mind of the street cat and ask yourself, what is its life like? You will find out it's the most beautiful thing you can do, just to lay on the plaster in the sun and just spend some hours. And there you have so much, so many little tiny sparks. You just
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
see.
Wow. Blake says, thanks for answering my question. Having never visited Berlin, I was unaware of how green the city is or how close the forest is or what
We
wildlife
have
it has.
a lot of forests and a lot of lakes in the city. It's thanks to the history. We were encircled by the wall,
Yeah.
so we had to have green lungs in the city to keep the
Ah,
oxygen working. And therefore, we had in the west and in the south, they kept the forest, the Grunewald and the Spandauer Wald, Spandauer Forest.
okay.
And they are still existing. So even
Wow.
separation of the city, 40 years of crying, had good things to come along. And that's also a very Druid thinking in my point of view. Whenever there is a problem, see the chance in it. As you can see, I sit here in a little witch's shop. It's the witch's shop my wife is running. It just came by chance. We were searching for an apartment. We were both self employed at this time. Try to find an apartment as self employed persons with no
Mhm.
fixed income or something in Berlin. You will have no chance. And then by chance we went down the street and saw this shop for rent with some rooms in the back. And we called them and said, yeah, we are both self-employed, but would you take us? They said, of course you're self-employed. Why wouldn't you want to have a shop if you're not a businessman? And we said, okay, yeah, cool. They would take us, so let's raise a shop. And then we made a shop. And since that day, we have an apartment behind a witch's shop. So
Beautiful.
we made the best out of it.
So I want to come back to the witch's shop, but there's here just a few comments on what you're saying. Gretchen says the wild is always there if you look close enough. I almost rescued. Oh my God, she almost rescued it. Sorry, comments are flying here. Thank you very much for your comments. I almost rescued a coyote thinking it was a lost dog running around San Diego. Wow. And then Sean Clancy says, love this advice so much. Thank you. Nature is all around us, even in the grey concreted street. We just need to open our eyes and make ourselves aware. Bealtaine blessings from Longford. Ah. And then Ava says, not even that, not even only an old centre, but many, if not most churches were built on top of old sacred places. Yes, the best example, Chartres Cathedral with its Druid caves underneath the catacombs. I wasn't aware of that. I always associate just the cathedral with the labyrinth. But interesting, Druid caves underneath the catacombs. But also the small churches are built in pagan holy grounds. Yeah. Where I live, they keep finding things from Celtic ages when starting a building. She says, I often try to listen to the breath of the past when I'm at special places in nature, but also in urban spaces. That's nice. I like that idea of listening to the breath of the past. That was
Mhm.
lovely. Oh, wonderful. Okay, anyway, Blake did a Google and looked at photographs of the forest in the city. Lucky to have so much forest within a city. I always assume, you mentioned you were surrounded by a wall. I always imagine, because I haven't been to Berlin, that it was a wall that just divided the city right down the middle. That's not the case, no?
No, the western part was encircled, was like an island in the GDR, and the wall was all along the border. So wherever you went in Western Berlin, you will end up at the wall. It was like a big prison, like this Kurt Russell movie, uh, the Rattlesnake. I don't remember the English name of the movie, where whole Manhattan is one prison. And like this was Western Berlin. So I grew up 500 meters from the wall. As a child, I used to go to the wall and throw bottles over it until somebody from the other side yelled. Then we ran because our parents told us there were doors in the wall, and if we molest those troops over there, they would come through the wall and get us and take us to the GDR, and we will never come back home. So it was
Wow.
our excitement as kids to throw bottles as much as we could find. And we were fast and bicycling whenever they yelled.
Um, so, so you're completely surrounded. So did you have
Yes,
kind of a border to get out of Berlin,
yeah.
West Berlin,
There
to
were
get into Germany?
there were three gateways in the wall, and you weren't allowed to leave one of those three lanes running through the GDR. So it was really like living in a prison. Three ways out, one to the north, one to the west, one to the south. You may not or you must not leave the road. And when you come to the next border, you can move freely.
Oh, I had no idea what that was like. Just in my mind, it was just a straight wall. Okay, wow.
And on the other hand, in this time, Berlin was still conquered. So you had troops, military, all over. It was a usual thing for me as a child to see soldiers walking down the streets. We had barracks just 2 streets away, British barracks. So it was usual that in the morning there were the troops marching out,
British
and in the
troop.
evening, yeah, they were marching back into their barracks. And wherever you went in Berlin, you saw people with arms. American soldiers, French soldiers. My grandfather, he was a he served in the Foreign Legion, and he
Okay.
worked here for the French army. It was, I would say that 20% of the people from Western Berlin were directly or indirectly working for the British, American, or French troops.
Yeah,
The
and
Cold
Julia,
War was very touchable in Berlin for a young child. I'm a 79er, so when the wall came down, I was 11 years old. I remember the whole thing.
wow. And Julia says, wow, I always thought it was the eastern side of the wall that couldn't go anywhere, not the west. That's what I did. That is just
No,
fascinating.
you see, you could every Eastern could go east to Poland, south to Czechia, Hungary was no problem. But Western Berlin was a tiny little island in the middle of the GDR. You couldn't go
Wow.
anywhere without entering or traveling through the GDR.
Wow. Well, Eva disagrees, but in the West Berlin, you were not prisoners, you were free. Eastern Berliners were prisoners.
As a child, and I'm speaking of
Childhood
my
experience.
experience as a child, to
Yeah.
me, I felt like being in a prison because wherever I wanted to go, there was this wall. I couldn't go any further than maybe 20 kilometers. And whenever I wanted to leave my city, it was a big thing to get all the papers. You had to travel through checkpoints. You had to wait there. You were examined. Your whole car was examined. It took hours to get through the checkpoints. You always had to have your passport with you because we were
Okay.
under war law in Berlin. If you
Wow.
wouldn't have had your passport with you, it was legal to shoot you.
Okay.
So, yeah, of course, I know this thing that all the people in the GDR were prisoners. On one hand, yes. On the other hand, there were a lot of things in the GDR, especially when it comes to youth, programs for the youth, that we in Western Germany dreamed of. So there were just very few rehearsal rooms for children or for youngsters in Western Germany. The whole sporting scene, of course, there is a big dark chapter about the GDR sporting and doping and stuff. But there was a real program. In Western Germany, if your parents were rich enough to get you to the right clubs and drive you to training every 3 days, then you could have a sporting career. But it was very hard to get a real support in Western Germany. And there,
Okay.
in the GDR, I know it. I played ice hockey for years. I also played at Eisbären Berlin, that just made the German championship yesterday. I know what I'm talking about because I had a training and sporting career in the West and were then sold to the Eisbären in the East. And
Okay.
it was like, wow, 3 ice halls, fitness centers, whirlpools. We were lucky to go twice on ice a week. There we
Wow.
had training every day.
Ooh, that's
Every
incredible.
medal got the golden and the dark side.
Yeah, yeah. Ricky Gellison, access in and out of West Berlin was a nightmare. Yeah, and he said, well, certainly when I might have been attempted when I was in HM Forces, even to visit other barracks officially. Okay. Gabby wants you to put up your website. Do you have a website?
Yeah, it's phoebeshexenstube.com. I will
Oh my
send you the link
goodness.
later and we can put it in the comment section, I would say.
You're not able. Okay, yes. You can
Oh,
type it in.
wait, we have a chat here, I see.
If you can put it in under all.
I hope I get it right now. Would check myself. Because as I said, the shop is mostly run by my wife. And so she's the one to do all the work, to be honest. Yep, it's correct. So here you have the link.
Oh, it's in the private chat. So what I'll do this is I shall copy that and put it in. Thank you. Lovely. Copy. Great.
Funny episode. In our Druid community here in Berlin, my wife got the nickname Hermione and I'm Ron. She's
very
always
good.
studying and working in this very on point. I'm still Bart because I'm just the lazy guy walking through the forest and enjoying this, enjoying that. So whenever it comes to serious thing, ask my wife. She's far better than I.
Well, I just want to say there's no such thing as only a bard.
No, that's real. But it's true. And then it's also a thing. I'm not shy of being a bard. And then coming to the gatherings in Glastonbury and joining rituals. And we're here, I'm founding father of our seed group here in Berlin. And we did rituals. And in those rituals, of course, I'm doing the Druid role or the element or whatever. Bard is something by heart. I started making music when I was 13, 14, something like that. I'm still working as a lighting engineer and lighting designer.
Mm-hmm.
So art is the thing that drives me, art and music. And so, of course, I know about herbs. Of course, I know about energies and stuff
Mm-hmm.
and stuff and stuff. But when I feel fine by being a bard, why hurry? One day there will be this moment where everything in myself will be crying, now get yourself down and write your summary. Yeah, then I will do it. But it just didn't happen till today.
Well, it took me 7 years. So if that's
I'm in my 7th year now, so
okay. It'll take it for everybody. It takes its own time, and that's what it does. It'll
And
happen.
especially, I think, especially when it comes to spirituality, you can't push yourself, you can't force things. Just find your pace and then go it. It's a long way. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So take your time
Mhm.
if you want to really come healthy to the end.
Yeah, beautiful. You mentioned now you write poetry. You write.
Yeah,
You're a
sometimes.
musician. Um, do you have a poem for us?
Yes, I thought a lot. I thought for a very long time, what poem do I want to present? And as I said before, we had our honeymoon in Glastonbury,
Yeah.
and part of our honeymoon was also a pagan hand fasting.
Lovely.
So I was sent on a quest by the priestess who performed the hand fasting to write a text about love. So I sat there in the GMP, looked over to the Abbey Park. Now again, all the people that know Glastonbury will now have hearts in their eyes. I said, okay, what more romantic place to write something you can find than the Abbey Park? So crossed the street, went into the park, and there is this little apple orchard at the very corner. And there you have a statue. I don't know if it's a goddess or just a scarecrow. To me, it was a goddess. And I sat there in the summer, as I said, first weekend of June. It was a warm, sunny day. Sat down in this apple orchard. There was a little bank. Took my piece of paper, and then it wrote. My hand just wrote. And this little poem that I wrote there in the orchard for my hand fasting, what love means to me. That's the poem that I chose.
Thank you.
Love. Love is just a simple word. Four letters in a row. To many men it isn't more. To many men it's just a whore. But just to those too blind to see that love is all what life's about. Just like John did sing to us, love is all we need. Love is the flame that warms our hearts, from our first cries to our grave. Love can make the lame man walking. Love can make the frightened brave. Love is what has got us here, and it will lead us on and on, from Avalon, that's in our hearts now, to the moon and to the sun.
Beautiful. And Bianca, was she happy with that?
She started to cry, as everyone else in the temple, and I took it as a good omen that the priestess was crying, that the Melissa was crying, that my wife was crying. I was standing there. Okay, so it wasn't that bad.
That's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. That's wonderful. To get back to your, do you remember your first spiritual experience?
Whew.
Or the first one you can remember, I suppose. I'm sure you've had many, but maybe, yeah.
I try to think of, maybe it was when I was a child, and for the first time, I had a horse when I was a child.
Mhm.
I went for the first time without a saddle. I was riding on this horse to the forest in full speed. I was 7, 8, something, and we became one. I became the horse became me. Maybe this was the first, without me knowing it, but the first spiritual moment. Um, then I remember I was on tour in 2006. I did rituals for myself, little tiny rituals in the forest, as nearly every teenager does. But then in 2006, I had the occasion to tour the UK with a rock band. And we had a travel day in the south, and there was this street sign saying Stonehenge. I looked at our driver and I was like, we're not in a hurry, no? What do you think of going to Stonehenge? It was quite late in the afternoon, so we called the band in the bus in the front. What do you think of going to Stonehenge? They were like, yeah, why not? But it's a bit late now. So we came to this parking, and this time there was the parking lot right across the street, and you just hit this tunnel. They were looking at us coming with a big truck and a van. Like, no, no way, you can't park here and it's way too late. And we started discussing, like, oh, we're on tour. And then the door opened and the band came out. One of the guards was a very big fan of the singer. And he looked at me. This isn't X Epsilon. Yes, he is. The singer from here. Guys, take your time. And we sat there. The sun went down. One of the band members had a guitar with him. And I remember this singer teaching me a song of the band on the acoustic guitar in the middle of Stonehenge. It was my first time visiting Stonehenge, far before visiting Stonehenge with the OBOD. It was very funny to me from on my first tour with the OBOD to Stonehenge. And they told me, oh, we are so excited. We may enter the stones. Nobody is allowed to enter the stones. I sat there, well, I was there 10 years ago playing guitar. And this was really a spiritual moment because we realized this is something out of time and we totally got lost. And then the sun went down, it was dark night, and then the guard came and, yeah, guys, I really love you, but please, you really have to leave now. And we were like, oh, it didn't happen, no? We didn't spend 4 hours in Stonehenge just playing guitar. So maybe this was one of the first Druid spiritual experiences. But as I said, when I was in this Buddhist temple we have here in Poland, run by monks from Salem, or Sri Lanka as we call it in German, and they asked me just to help them by decorating the temple, because I was a stage engineer at this time, so I could better work with the drill than the monk.
Okay.
And they really loved my decoration, and then took me to a meditation. Said, now we teach you how to meditate. And I sat there with some Buddhist monks teaching me how to meditate. I was 17, 18, something like that. And of course, this overwhelmed me. As you said, there are so many points. I would say, yeah, maybe this was the first, or maybe this was, I can't say it. And I guess everyone, if they're searching really their lives, looking at this question, I guess everyone would say, well, no, there was one thing more before. There was one thing more before. And they would trace it back to some point in the childhood. And the other things are just the flashing fireworks.
That's really interesting you say that, because if you were to ask me, I wouldn't have gone back to childhood. And yet I remember I had a pony as a child, and I remember riding bareback, cantering through fields and being at one with the pony, and just that sense of amazement and wonder and oneness and confidence and complete trust in this pony, who obviously had trust in me, and just that freedom. And I still long to have that experience again. I went riding recently. I managed, but I was very sore for a few weeks afterwards. I hope to do it again. But that freedom, now granted I was using a saddle, but as a child it was bareback, and pure bliss, just that So I okay, that's one to add to my own early experiences of
Feeling
that.
every muscle of this powerful animal. And then when later I read about Rhiannon, and there is this beautiful tale about the prince chasing Rhiannon,
Yes,
um, I could so feel this Rhiannon, even as a male,
yes,
because I knew how it feels to be a horse. And yeah,
it's beautiful. Just beautiful. Yeah. So you composed that poem before when you were just joined the order. So
it,
for your work, I mean, I know you're big into you're big into heavy metal,
yes,
punk.
heavy
So
metal punk crossover, this whole violent and dark and bad music. To be honest, I would ask everyone, go to a big heavy metal festival and then talk to those long-haired, leather-wearing beardy guys. You will find out 90% of them are just big teddy bears trying to have a big armor to not show how fragile they are inside. If you want to look for a babysitter, go to a heavy metal festival. You will find the perfect babysitter there. So to me, as I know the scene, I know it's not about violence. It's not about being dark or I don't know, killing babies. It's just a way of expressing or getting rid of the energy. And you asked me if I couldn't play something here in the Fireside Chat. I said, well, I don't think that Slayer or Body Count would be appropriate. That's the kind of music I really love. And I remember Dave, our Pendragon, told me that his musical career started as a drummer in a heavy metal band.
go away.
So even
You've got a few
Dave
fans
Bard
here.
has a heavy metal background. Um, of,
You've got a
and
few
then,
fans here.
thank you. Um, so to me, being peaceful on one hand and balance and harmony and listening to Motorhead isn't something that doesn't go along. Totally the opposite. It works perfectly.
Well, here I'm a metalhead, a bit middle-aged lady who rocks to Iron Maiden and Avenged Sevenfold. It's all about the energy. Okay, sorry, but my husband is a third grade teacher and a drummer in a heavy metal band. You can be both. Makes me wish I liked that kind of music. I'm with you, Amanda. Um, it's just so you're getting. This is from Jean or Jean. Hello, my friends from the French Alps. Thanks for sharing your experience from a heavy metal drummer. So you're
Yeah,
that's me.
it's the police station across. Oh, it's not far away from us, and yeah, now they're gone. And we have also a hospital right across the street.
Oh,
So
that's
sometimes we
quite
have
that.
this
No worries.
disco running out of the street.
Lovely. So my ninth grade year in high school was spent as friends with headbangers who were also into heavy metal. Um, so Lumber Gretchen says this is to go back to horses are so amazing and our partnership with them is truly incredible. The jousters I used to work with treated their horses like big dogs, wrestling with them, just being part of the herd. Just astonishing. Wow, that's really interesting. And then Amanda says, love that too. The oneness with the horse, its legs become yours and for a moment you're transported into another time space. Sharing an experience is one. That's exactly it. So we've got horse fans and punk and headbangers. It's interesting when you suggest, if you're looking for a babysitter, go to a rock band. I thought, is that that there's such lullabies that you can take the child with you and be.
Think of the most beautiful.
Or you get a punk to be your babysitter.
Well, I didn't say go to a punk concert. I love punk and
Heavy
I
metal.
love punks,
Heavy
but I
metal.
said go to heavy metal. Because remember, the most beautiful ballads and most powerful love songs are written by heavy metal bands. They can be very, very soft. And when you know how to treat an acoustic guitar, you know how to treat a baby. I would
Okay,
say
I take your point. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Who's your favorite heavy metal band?
Motorhead, Foo Fighters. Well, Foo Fighters is not really heavy metal, but Probot, one project of Dave Grohl, is quite metal. I love Iron Maiden. I saw them a couple of times. Lamb of God, Slayer, Body Count, when we came to the X over crossover. And then, of course, the music of my youth, like Rage Against the Machine, all this grungy metal stuff. But when it comes to heavy metal, it's mostly things like Slayer, Sepultura, so really powerful stuff.
Well, Julia says Metallica, Nothing Else Matters, and More Than Words by Inks. So there you are. So that's just wonderful.
The ballad section.
And Nirvana. Are they? Yeah. So I tend to be softer, though I'm open, but
Heavy metal wouldn't exist without blues, without Little Richard, without the Rolling
yeah.
Stones, without Jimi Hendrix. And if you want to play this kind of music, you should have listened to all this. Of course, I also love the Doors or this whole 60s music. But when I came home from work after a 15-hour shift or 10-hour shift, just put my headphones on, Slayer
Boom, boom,
Full
boom.
Limit, and just shoot the head away.
Well, Pat Booker, listen to it. Rage Against the Machine is her alarm clock. She wakes up every morning to Killing in the Name of.
Oh, nice start for the day.
And Gav Hines
Prodigy
says,
Firestarter is also very good to wake up.
I wake up to harp music. I'm so sad and pathetic.
I would love,
A gentle, just easing into the day out of my sleep. But
to be
and
honest, my alarm clock is the sound of birds. That
he's
takes me
talking.
always 2 minutes to realize that these are the artificial birds from my alarm clock. So when I really have to get up, it's Rammstein. Rammstein,
Okay,
for example, of course, is a German. I worked for Rammstein sometime, a couple of times. Not all of it, but a big part of the music of Rammstein is something that I really like.
oh, okay, it's brilliant. Gav Hines says Phil Taylor, Motorhead drummer, is buried in his town, and he went to his grave the other
Oh,
week. So it's
Filthy the Animal, Fast
yeah.
Filthy.
So Fawn has some beautiful songs. Means nothing to me. More pagan metal. It would appeal to you. Okay. Okay. My alarm is Led Zeppelin. Now I like I Stairway to Heaven. Takes away my woe. Somebody says that. Do they fall into the category of heavy metal?
Led Zeppelin is the founding father of heavy metal.
Okay, I was
And
afraid to
without songs
say that.
like how it's called, not Innocent, but Immigrant Song. To me, this da-da-dum, da-da-dum, this is one of the founding riffs of metal, and you can break down heavy metal to Cream, to Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, of course, Deep Purple. That's the root for heavy metal in my point of view.
Well, Stairway to Heaven, I forgave Led Zeppelin, and I used to tease my son. I'd say, I like Led. He's a very nice man. It's not a man, it's a band. So but I do. I even tried to, I thought I'd learn it on the harp, but it doesn't work on the harp. But anyway, and I'm not good enough. But it's really interesting. There's lots of, oh, he's talking about Phil. It says Filthy Phil on his grave, and I'm a little teddy bear. I don't swear. Okay. Immigrant song about the Vikings. Yes, you're getting lots of response here. So Stephanie says, and I don't know, isn't Stairway to Heaven about Lord of the Rings?
No, I wouldn't say so. No, I always understood Stairway to Heaven. It's about drugs, hard drugs, and the positive and negative effect of drugs, that they can take you wherever you want to go, but they are also taking you to the grave. To me, it was always the description of a drug trip. But as I'm a German, I sit there with a dictionary to translate songs. Um, I have no idea, but I don't think that Stairway to Heaven is something has something to do with a Lord of the Rings.
It's interesting. I couldn't answer that question at all because what I liked about the song is not the lyrics. I don't hear lyrics. I hear the melody.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that's what I hear, and that's what will transport me.
Funny thing about Stairway to Heaven, it's one of the songs that are banned in guitar shops. You're gonna be thrown out of the guitar shop when you start playing Stairway to Heaven. Same thing with Smoke on the Water, because everyone does.
Yes.
And so you're banned.
Oh, I'm just going to bring us back to horses. Sandy says, who's in Tintagel. A stone circle near me has a white mare who runs wild on the moors. I call her Rhiannon, as when we cast a circle, she will appear with a lot of other moor ponies, but will wait until the circle is uncast before she enters or leads the other ponies into it. Wow.
It's beautiful.
That's something, isn't it?
Beautiful.
Thank you, Sandy. That's really, really nice. Just quite magic. So from horses and white mares to stone circles. And Gretchen says, Ramble On references Lord of the Rings. Okay, if that might help. And Pat tried to learn Stairway to Heaven on the ukulele, but it's not the same.
On the ukulele. I bought a double neck guitar just to learn it. To have this possibility to change, so performing it on just 4 strings instead of 18 strings. Wow, it's brave. It's really brave.
Oh, great. So Lindsay says it's also about money and how it's not the root of happiness. Okay, that's wonderful. All right. It's an interesting conversation. I wasn't expecting this, from mares to heavy metal to and what is it? She says, and now 7 Nation Army will get you thrown out of guitar shops. It's great.
Yep.
So brilliant. So when
honest, these
are
the songs that are the first to be played in every session I ever been part of. It's always like, oh, what do you want to play? Boom, 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 boom. Oh yeah, I know this one. And everyone is doing 7 Nation Army, but nobody does. No.
Actually, someone says Terry Pratchett wrote a great novel. This is Sky Guy. Terry Pratchett wrote a great novel, Music with Rocks in, where Stairway to Heaven is banned in guitar shops. And then Ricky says, although the cover by Skald with a Nordic twist to 7 Nation Army is rather good. Okay. Anyway, I'm kind of at sea here because I don't know any of these songs. Like I said, what my mother say, I like nice music, kind of soft kind of stuff. So I'm laughing at myself, not being derogatory about everybody else's taste. I was, as a child, I loved the Beatles. I was terrified of the Rolling Stones because Mick Jagger was just too wild for me. Not now, but as when I was younger, it was like Beatles were like boys next door and they sang nice songs. And
but if you now read about how the Beatles behaved backstage, they weren't any better than the Rolling Stones.
No doubt about it. But it's their persona. It was like they my parents sang their songs and they were quite conservative, even though not very old. But just they just didn't. The Stones didn't get inside their house.
Me too. With my first band, it was a school project. Of course, we played Beatles songs like Daydream Believer or whatever. I guess if you love music, you can't love music without having some love for the Beatles. And
true.
What I really love are the Beatles movies, like Help. If you really want to see something confusing, something totally weird, just look Help. It's a great movie.
I've never seen them. Just Sean Clancy's loved that. Just reminded that Terry Pratchett also wrote that any CD left in a car stereo for too long, sorry, magically turned into the best of Queen. I only discovered Terry Pratchett a few years ago, thanks to Pat Booker and Pamela Meeking Stewart, and he's just amazing. Just really, really enjoyed him.
One of my most favorite authors. I really love Terry Pratchett.
Yeah.
And when I went to school, when I was a kid, I had my long hair, black leather jacket. I was a metalhead. Had headphones, listened to heavy metal, looking like this. But I had those Terry Pratchett books. So suddenly, out of nothing, I started to laugh in the tube or in the underground. Can you imagine how people react when a metalhead suddenly starts and looking back like this? Yeah, I love Terry Pratchett.
Brilliant, brilliant. And then Pat says, Waylander are a great Irish metal band, never heard of them, dealing with Irish myths, but the singing is that throaty, roary style, which I'm not fond of. I knew one of the band mothers used to know guys in bands. Now that I know their mums. Okay, she used to know people in bands. Now she knows their mothers. Okay. Yeah. Okay, this probably makes me a terrible mother. This is from Gretchen, but my 2-year-old goes nuts for sympathy for the devil and sings the woo-woos. That means nothing to me, but that's quite funny.
Well, I guess she's talking about the Rolling Stones song "Sympathy for the Devil."
Oh, that Rolling Stones?
Allow me to introduce myself, and in the end, you have this woo woo, call my name, woo woo.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. So Pat says she misses Terry Pratchett, but grateful to still have Neil. Is it Gaiman or Gaiman? Okay. And Freddie mentions Good Omens. Brilliant. So when for you has Druidry supported you?
Oh, a lot of times. A lot of times. First of all, it helped me to find my inner balance.
Okay.
And by finding this inner balance, as I said, I was since the death of my uncle, I was on this search. I was always driven by the searching for answers.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I got into Druidry, and the more all those parts that I experienced over the last years made like a puzzle, came together and created a picture. The more and more I found myself in balance. And as I said, I'm working as a stage engineer. I was on tour for a lot of years. It's a very stressy job, and it's not this 9 to 5, but you're always under power. You're always giving the best, and to have this possibility to just by breathing in, going to your happy place, to your Druid grove, or doing these 3 breathings, and in 30 seconds, you're totally down to earth, you're cooled. And yes, okay, the track is delayed by 2 hours. Who cares? Why running mad around? It won't help us. It won't make the truck driver faster. So it can help you a lot, or it helps me a lot in my everyday work, just to keep cool, to keep in balance. On the other hand, it helps me, my knowledge about herbs helps me whenever I start to feel like there is a cold coming in. Okay, just take tea, tup, tup, tup. I'm not the one to be sick, to be not on the job, and the whole concert has to be cancelled because the technician isn't available. So it's the easy things on one hand, and on the other hand, it helped me dealing with the big questions of life and death. It helped me to help other people. We had this thing with a former girlfriend of mine who committed suicide 3 years ago. And it was a big shock for everyone in our circle. There's a lot of people who we knew each other for 15 to 20 years.
Uh-huh.
And there again, Druidry helped me to help the others. Just to have the possibility to listen. For example, you don't try to give answers. Don't speak. Listen. This is helping the most. That's what Druidry is teaching you. And also understanding life in a better way, or understanding the life that brought you here. A lot of people say, oh, I made a terrible mistake, and if I could change my life, I would. No, why? Everything you did, every mistake. I love this picture of a crossroad.
Mm-hmm.
You would come to crossroads nearly every day. You can go one way or the other. Sometimes you have this little demon standing there, trying to sell you one way is the perfect way. Mostly it isn't. And whatever way you take, first thing I had when I was 17, I was very hard to be a rock star. But I realized you won't live of playing guitar. You won't make a living out of it. And there was this chance to become an engineer, stage engineer.
Okay.
And I said, okay, let's take the other way. Later I realized, yeah, maybe it could have worked out with the music, but do you really want it? Do you want to be famous? Do you want that everyone knows you? Do you want everyone taking pictures of you when you come out of the pub totally drunken, when you look like, I don't know, because you just woke up? You will never know if the nice lady in front of you is really into you or into your name. I'm just a stage engineer. Nobody cares about me. So I know that every reaction I get is real.
Yes.
So I'm very happy for taking this way. And it wasn't a mistake at all. Of course, there were bad decisions in my life. I had a real sincere drug problem for years when I was in the beginning of the 20s. But dealing with this, getting over this by myself, made me so strong that I was never ever afraid again of things. One of my sayings is don't be afraid of anything other than fear, because you don't have to fear anything but fear. And of course, I lost some years, but I experienced life from the very bottom. And still today, where I'm fine, I have a good job, my wife got a good job, we have a good life, I still love the little things. And I can be happy about a little tiny butterfly just flying around. I don't need a big Mercedes Benz. I just need a car where I can put my guitar in and get from A to B. I don't need fancy dresses or anything. I just need something to keep me warm. I don't need the best restaurants every day. No, I love to cook by myself. I learned it as I had a little money. So I had to learn how to cook. And I prefer my own food because I know what's in there. And I know nobody spit into the pot. Um, um, so be thankful for everything that happens in your life. Because in the end, it makes you the guy or the girl you are today. And when you can look in the mirror in the morning and say, whoa, you're ugly, but I love you, then everything's right and everything is fine. And just try to love the person you see in the mirror. Try to accept this person. And that's Druidry to me.
Sandy Coombs says, very wise words. I truly believe when It's when you hit rock bottom, you find yourself on solid ground.
Yes, exactly. And you will find out who's really a friend. You will find out what life is about. And you will see you won't need very much to be happy.
Yeah. And when you're on solid ground, you don't need a shovel. You can go up.
Yep.
You don't have to dig deeper.
And every shovel of mud they're putting on you is just helping you if you dance on it.
Oh, no, I like that. If people shit on you, you can stand on it. Great.
Yep.
Brilliant. Amanda says, I think when we face our undoing and choose, there's not much externally that can intimidate us. When we face our own depths, I'm not sure there's much more out there, more powerful than what lives within us. Absolutely. I like that idea. There's nothing more powerful out there than what's within. And I think holding on to that is I think, really, really important. Michelle says, wise and lovely words. Yeah, absolutely. So, what has been your greatest achievement? You may have spoken about that, but I'm just interested, or what is it you're most proud of in terms of your life?
To have a 17-year-old son.
Oh.
Being never arrested by the police. Never ever had serious problems with anything. So, like alcohol, drugs, or something. He was on his way to make a good life, to go to university. He's just in his last years in college. I would say that's the only thing that I'm proud of, because he is the product of the education of his mother and of my part. And it turned out to be good.
Wonderful.
And he's a guy where I can say I have total belief in him. I know he's nice to animals, he's nice to other people. He's not laughing about handicapped or poor persons. He's just an easy guy who loves to help out. And yeah, with this, I achieved more, I guess, than you can ask for.
I think one of the hardest achievements is to be a decent parent and to bring up a child, and for them to become, good,
And
decent adults.
he's still with the 17 years old. Every evening when he goes to bed, he still comes to the living room and says, "Yeah, I'm going to bed, and Daddy, I love you."
Oh, it's sweet.
And to have a 17-year-old guy telling you, "I love you," I guess
Beautiful.
that's heartwarming every night or every evening.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. Well done. And what's the most reckless thing you've done? Okay, you've mentioned a few things, but I'm just saying, what is the most reckless thing you've done?
Well, unfortunately, there are a lot. As I said, I had serious problems with drugs. And in this time, I wasn't a nice guy after all.
Uh-huh.
And I hang out with guys that were nice. And you will come, or you will find yourself little by little, but you will wake up one day in a world when you have this spiritual thinking inside, somewhere deep inside you. You will find yourself looking in the mirror and saying, "No, I see a monster." And I was in a scene, yeah, we felt like gangsters at this time. We called ourselves gangsters. And we did things that were really against the law, hardly against the law. And there was also violence included, and violence towards weaker persons. And still today, I would say that's the most reckless thing I ever done. That's the thing that still scares me, because I know how dark I can be. I know my dark side. I've lived my dark side. I know the inner demon. And as I said, everything that is good part, just because I have this memory, just because I faced this time, I know what's sleeping inside of me, and therefore I can work on it. Sometimes it's of a good use.
Mm-hmm.
If you're really into, for example, if you're overtired and you need some more energy, when you then wake up this little black demon inside you, you will find energy. It's a dance with the devil. Um, but I know what's sleeping inside of me, and I can have an eye on it. And I can warn other people when I see them going on ways that I know that will lead you to the rock bottom. And therefore, even if I'm everything but not proud of it, if there is the thing, if I could turn back time, would I change it? No, because it was also the dark experiences are important experiences. Everyone has a dark side and a light side. And pretending I'm just love and light will burn you out. And you will be heartily smashed into your demon. Be aware of your demon
Yep.
and live with it.
There's some questions from our viewers here, and one that I have is what got you to turn around from that place of drug use, violence, all of that? What was it
This,
that?
this very moment when there was someone obviously weaker that oh, I, to be honest, that I slapped hardly into the face. Because we were told that he robbed us. Later, it turned out this person was innocent. It
Okay.
was one of our own guys who robbed us. And this was this moment when I stood in front of the mirror and said, no, you are not Björn or Carlos or whatever. You are a monster. You are a demon. You nearly beat up an innocent, weaker person. What do you want life to be? Shall this be your life? No. And then it was a question of a week or 2 weeks that I left everything that I told everyone. Leave me alone, I will leave you alone. I will not say any names to anyone ever. I will keep it with myself. But we will separate our ways now. It meant I had no friends from one day to another.
Mhm.
Because if you are in this kind of scene, you don't have friends outside the scene. Friends.
Mhm.
Of course, there were some threats. It's part of the game if you get out of it. But it worked. And nowadays, I'm sitting here chatting with you, being proud of my son, having a good job, a beautiful wife, and a lot of them are sitting in prison. So I
Wow.
guess I took the right way at this crossroad.
Wow. There's another question. Poppy asks, did you ever make amends in order to forgive yourself? I mean, there might have been a number of things, and I just want to know. Another question is how you managed to get out of the drugs. Anyway, just if you can answer that one, if you're able to.
What happened, happened. You can't change it, and I don't want to free my mind or try something to feel better about it. It's part of my life, and I just found an arrangement by saying you will never ever go there back again to this point. Um, I never managed to see this guy again, so I could never ask for an excuse eye by eye. Um, but I know, I heard it later, that as it came out that he was innocent. Um, he was he was also part of the scene, so he wasn't and just innocent. He was just innocent in this case, and he was given some reparation. How to say it in English?
Reparation.
Reparation, and he was fine in the end with it.
Okay.
And but as I said, 2 weeks later, I was totally out of this whole circle. So I just barely know what happened to those person. There's just one who also went out some years later, and he still is in contact with some of them. So I know some of them are in prison now, but
Okay.
I don't have any more information.
So how did you stop your drug taking? I mean, you said you were seriously in. I mean, were you addicted or were you still managing? How
Yes.
did you just go from obviously being a regular drug user to not, with no supports, with no friends? How did you manage to do this?
Just stop it.
Wow.
I went to Cuba for 2 weeks, and I knew that on Cuba, if they get you with drugs, you will go to a Cuban prison, and you don't want to be inside a Cuban prison. So I went down there with nothing in my pocket. And if you make it to not take anything for 2 weeks, then it's just your head. It's not your body anymore. And then you just have to fight your head. And thanks to years and years and years of sports and training and discipline, I know how to fight my head.
Wow.
But I'm still fighting my head. It's 20 years ago now. But when I come to a place, to a club or something, and I smelled that somebody smoked cocaine. I was a cocaine smoker, which is close to crack.
Wow.
When I have this smell in my nose, I immediately want to vomit.
Okay.
So it's really like, um, so you won't get it out of yourself. Never. If you were once addicted, you will still have the scar, and you will always be in danger. But as long as you keep this in mind and go through life open-eyed, I guess it's quite a good way to deal with it. But it was just my way. Everyone, I guess, has to find its own way, and whoever has problems, go and search for help. It's not the end of the 90s anymore. You can speak up if you have problems nowadays. There are a lot of therapy centers, there are voluntary things, anonymous things. Go and search for help. And there's always a way out.
Yes. Sean says, it takes such incredible strength to be able to face that dark time, those devil dances, and to grow from it, work on it, and not pass it to the next generation. You're an absolute parenting inspiration.
Cheers. Thank you.
Yeah. So it's, I've not heard this described quite this way before. It's absolutely lovely. It's from Amanda. Full integration. Pat says, people who pretend they're just love and light bring out my dark side. The ones I've known have been selfish and egocentric to a toxic extent. What strength of character? So many young men can't escape the grip of gangs. And Stephanie said, sometimes that evil can bring out our brightest light. It's a hard road to lift yourself out of it. It's very inspiring to hear stories like yours, Björn.
Thank you.
And Sandy says, acceptance of what you are and have done are really good building blocks for your future. You can relate to others who have similar experiences and help them. It's very hard to turn your life around. Please be proud of yourself, how you are now, and will be in the future.
Thank you.
And it's interesting, Pat says a lot of prisons expect people to express shame in order to get remission of sentence, but actually staying with shame for too long is debilitating. It keeps people trapped at the level of their actions. Can you comment on that?
Yes, because shame will always be like a rock on your shoulder. To say, I did things wrong, and these things aren't things that you can be proud of, doesn't mean you have for the rest of your life to carry this heavy stone around your neck. It's necessary to face it, to be honest about it, and to not try to make it somehow not that bad and I had my reason. Don't fool around. It was bullshit and it will stay bullshit for the rest of your life. But your life, every day, every second, you can restart your life by just one decision. And if you make this decision, then take this stone, put it in your backpack with all the other bullshit. Take the backpack and throw it into the next river. Free yourself. Don't free yourself from remembering, but free yourself carrying.
Okay. Yeah, I'm really struck, about the importance of self-awareness, aware of the demon within. And I think it's when we are aware of those, it means it frees us. We don't have to act on them. And it's that acting out through lack of awareness is where we do the damage.
And to be honest, we had this, why I'm still a bard, or why I take this long time. To me, bardic work, this whole bardic course is dealing with your shadow side, dealing with your inner demon. And the bigger the demon, the more time you will need. So don't rush it. Take the time needed, because it's the foundation for everything to come. And if you want to build on sand, you won't build a castle, you will build a hut.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Poppy says, life gives to us what we give to others. So to make amends sometimes means being good and kind to others, even if the one we hurt has disappeared from our life. Maybe your example of overcoming so many difficulties gives hopes to others. And absolutely. And Gretchen says, some of the most wonderful people I know have lifted themselves out of an absolute darkness. Acknowledging where you've been can really help illuminate the path in front of you. I think so. Absolutely.
There is a beautiful saying in German. I'll try to translate it into English. It says, those who are religious are afraid of hell. Those who have seen hell or have walked hell, they get spiritual.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yep, I like that. Pat says, you're not your worst action. You're a brave man, Bjorn, and wise. And then Gretchen says, be a beacon for those looking for a way forward is just as important. And that's when she's talking about illuminating the path in front of you by acknowledging where you've been. Absolutely. And then Michelle says, I love it. Don't free yourself from remembering, free yourself from carrying. Very wise. And shame is one of the most humbling teacher. I could write many volumes of the spiraling depth of shame. We must cast off our self-imposed shackles of guilt. We must relearn to fall in love with ourselves all over again. Couldn't agree with you more, Salve. Couldn't agree with you more. Absolutely. And I suppose, just with our conversation, you're such an example of that. And just, it's very reassuring to hear you speak in that way. I mean, I've worked in the areas of addictions and nobody was talking like that. It was shame, guilt. I mean, I think you have to acknowledge it, but there was something around, you chose to look at yourself. Nobody pushed you into it. So it came from within. You took a good look at yourself in the mirror, realize the monster that's there and say, I'm done with this. This is not the person I want to be. Where often with some centers around addiction is about humiliation and pain and And which I think you may feel shame and guilt. Absolutely. It's the thing about not staying with it, because guilt can actually motivate you to do something, or so can shame. It's when it becomes toxic and that you are stuck with it for the rest of your life, then that's what the problem. So I think you're a great example of coming out of that and not letting it go. And things like not forgetting, but it's about not holding on to it. Yeah.
Because everything else would be a lie.
Yeah.
Of course, you can go to another town, you can change your name, you can color or dye your hair or whatever. But in the very end, and let's be honest, we're a spiritual community. We all know that on our last day, with our last breath, we will face everything again. It's your question. No, it's the question everyone should ask himself. What kind of movie do I want to see?
Yeah.
Because you're the director. And of course, every movie has its drama. Every movie got its scary points, horror points, splatter. I don't know. For people who served in the army, they've seen things far worse than I've ever seen. A friend of mine was a what's called a field doctor in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
I know what he saw. He told me. And he will have this picture with him for the rest of his life. So it's on him. If in this very last moment he will just see the horror and the splatter, or will he see beautiful moments that came after? So get over your PTSD, get over your addiction, get over your self-hate, your self-shame, everything, because that's the only way to make the movie a good movie. And that's how I try to live. That when I will close my eyes, I will see a movie where I say, "Oh, interesting and worth an Oscar," and hopefully a happy end. Let's have a look if I achieve it.
Yeah, I'm Ferdy, it says, I think it's Brené Brown that writes that guilt is healthy. It tells us we've done something wrong. That's true. But shame is poisonous. It tells us we are something wrong. Absolutely. And then Poppy says, aren't shame and guilt catalysts for change? And then we focus on the change we flow to. I think so. I mean, they're there for a reason. It's about being stuck in them. If you feel guilty, do something about it.
Yep.
And if you have a choice to do something, and if it's going to make you feel guilty, then don't do it. Or
Exactly.
I remember in my own therapy years ago, I was struggling about saying no to a significant person in my life, and I could never say no. And I was always saying yes when I really wanted to say no. And my therapist said, well, what happens if you say no? I said, well, the sky will fall in. And then she said, well, okay, well, I'd be guilty. And she said, well, why not say no, stew in the guilt, and it'll pass. And I did. And I really shifted, because what I really needed to do was say no. But you get a habit of being a yes person or a people pleaser or a constant giver that you can't say no. And once I did, it was very, very freeing. So now I know it's like, okay, I'm going to have that bar of chocolate, or I'm going to have a glass of wine, but I'm not going to be feeling guilty, because if I will feel guilty, then I'm not taking it. You know, you can still have choices as well. So guilt and shame are really, really useful. It's when they become overused, we have the problem.
Yes. And when they are used as a weapon against you.
Ah.
So a lot of people are just on for finding points where they can put you down, and mostly those people trying this and trying to put you down by your own shame, because once a drug addicted, always a drug addicted, once violent, always violent. They do it because of the lack of arguments.
Yes.
They don't find anything actual they can use against you. They see you and they say, I have to find something. So let's dig somewhere in his past. I will find something just because they are impressed by you. Because they are afraid of you, they try to put you down.
Yeah.
Because they have no real argument. There's no meat on the bone for
Mhm.
whatever they criticize you. They have nothing. So they try to put you down over this shame and guilt thing. Whenever someone tries to put you down, remember he's trying to put you down to make himself bigger.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, yeah.
So how small must somebody be to put someone else down? And especially a lot of men love to put down women, tell them, yeah, you're just a woman. Of course, you can't know this. You're not good enough. This whole gender gap thing. Yeah, because most men are afraid of women. And have this in mind whenever the next guy is trying to push you down. He's just afraid of you.
Adrian says a true warrior knows that he is capable of extreme violence, but chooses not to. Absolutely.
There is this beautiful saying, it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a wall.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yes. Tim says, for me, shame and guilt is about remembering what you did and living in remorse. Knowing what you did, how you were, means you can make change and live another life. That is so true. Yeah. I think that's very much in keeping with what you've been saying.
Yes. And use your past as your fertilizer. As you mentioned, Adrian. Um, Adrian, his whole life is now helping people out of addictions.
This is Adrian Rook. Yeah.
Yeah. What made him being this person? Because he knows what he was talking or what he's talking about, because he lived through it. So when you have the experience that you came or you made it over an addiction, and you don't have a lot of people then sit there in a new world and have no idea what to do with their new strength, their new freedom, their new powers, then start working as a therapist. It's the best thing you can do because you know what you're talking about.
Mm.
Because the
Absolutely.
bird can teach other birds to fly, and you
Yes.
are a bird.
Yes. That's absolutely wonderful. Do you have you mentioned your breathing that helps you. Do you have a daily practice?
Not really, because I don't want Druidry to become a routine.
Okay.
Um, I want to keep it as something special that I do on special occasions with special thinking, a special mindset. I take my time.
Okay.
Funny thing, before I work somehow spiritual or druidry like, I have a shower. To me, it's very important. By showering, washing away all the day, everything, all those thoughts, huh?
Yeah.
um, and then I can concentrate, get myself down, get in the right mindset, and do something. Um, I don't want Druidry to be my morning coffee.
Okay.
It's still something special to me. It's something sacred, holy, and therefore I don't want to have a daily routine. Maybe it will change in 2, 3, 5 years. I don't know. Um, but this is as I'm feeling now.
Well, with the beauty of Druidry, or for ours, is within the order, is that you practice it as you see fit for you. There's no rules and
Mm.
regulations. We don't talk about holy druids and all of that. How many rituals do you do a day? Nobody's interested in that. It's about how you find meaning in your own life and how it supports you.
And that's one thing, because here in Berlin we are very deep into this interreligious dialogue and work a lot with other pagan groups. I don't want to put anyone down, but I met a lot of pagans that told me, oh, I couldn't be a Christian because it's all what this book says. But, so I'm in my coven, and my high priestess, she knows totally what I have to think, what I have to eat, what I have to do, what I have to. I'm sitting there, yeah, you change one book for another.
Right.
And I'm not a pagan to change one book for another. I became a pagan, a panentheist, a druid, whatever you want to call it, to be free, to be as free as the bird, as the whale in the sea, as it feels right for me. Because to me, it's very important that when I'm thinking of spirituality or sacred things, holy things, it must feel good and right. What doesn't feel right isn't right.
Okay. Ferdy says the only holy druids are the ones without mothballs. That's lovely. Adrian Bullen says, what about grounding and centering? Do you do things like that? You do, actually. Could you talk about your breathing when you're stressed?
Of course. But I don't do it. It's the same, for especially grounding and those breathing things. It's to me like some kind of medicine. And you won't take aspirin every day or every morning. You can do it, but it will lose its force, its power. So of course, rituals are something totally different. But when we're speaking of daily life, I take these groundings, earthings, breathings really as some kind of medicine. When I feel that I'm flipping, when I feel that I'm too stressed, when I'm getting into panic because I'm working in big stages, we have really the biggest congresses, the biggest concerts you can imagine. And if something's going wrong 15 minutes before the start, you will have a heartbeat because you know this event is worth 20, 30 million euros and you're the one who's in charge to make it happen. And you will have a lot of problems if it doesn't happen. So when I'm standing there and having this heartbeat, then there is just getting out of my shoes, feeling my feet on the ground, 3 breaths. Okay, now let's talk on, and now let's find a solution for the problem.
So what interests me here is that, because what often happens is, and this is when I'm, in my work with, or there've been times myself, I'm running around like a headless chicken that I forget, or in the past, I'm much better at it now. Just breathe. I've developed a habit to recognize the signs of, I'm going to lose this one, and pull myself in time. And that's obviously you have acquired that skill that you are able to pull yourself in time before you've lost it. Yeah. Am I correct? Yeah. But there needs a bit of practice beforehand, or that you're able to recognize the sign. So for some people, they find it hard to recognize it in time, and it's too late, and say, oh, I didn't think of that. I just got to my old way, which is to panic and run around like a headless chicken. So
thanks
it's about,
again.
Yeah. So it's about,
thanks again to my sporting career. Okay. I was a goaltender, and I was taught from my teenage times on, before the match, when you get nervous, and ice hockey goaltenders, they are nervous because they know it will hurt, it will be fast, it will be.
Goaltender, you mean the goalkeeper?
Goalie, yeah, exactly. I was ice hockey goalkeeper. And you learn that you breathe before the match, and you breathe yourself down. And when it comes to the penalty, that everyone loves when it's 1-on-1, there is the winger, the center, and you stand there in your goal and you go like, he's wearing a smiley underwear. He's wearing smiley underwears. And then you have the coolness to be there. And I guess there also one part of the puzzle grabbed into the other when I learned this breathing techniques of the OBOD. It was like, yeah, that's the second step to the first step I learned in ice hockey.
Brilliant. Yeah. Wonderful. Salve says we must recognize at vital times it's okay to just stop and recalibrate and take stock, breath, and let things reset. Absolutely. And so that's what you do. But you see, you've already had the discipline. You've had the years of training, and then you follow into what we do within the order in terms of those techniques that they haven't come out of nowhere. They've come out of years of practice.
Yeah, so, there again, I can say the more you are able to discipline yourself, and the more you are ready to discipline yourself, the freer you will get.
Yeah.
Discipline is the way to be free.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And self-discipline is about being a follower of yourself, which is doing what's best for you at any one time. That's absolutely wonderful. We're coming towards the end of our chat. So I'm just, one concern that you have about the modern world?
At the moment, a lot of them. Especially when I see how brainless the people cry and cheer for a new Cold War. Mm. I can remember the Cold War.
Okay.
And when I see how everyone is now like, yeah, deep inside, yeah, now, come on, let's get the Ukrainians the weapons so that they can kick the ass of Mr. Putin and the Russians. You don't know what fire you're dealing with. And I always hoped that my son wouldn't live in a world where there's an iron curtain running through. I thought we are over it. And this concerns me the most.
Mm-hmm.
And it really worries me. As I said, the only thing to fear is fear. I try not to fear. But I guess we live in the most dangerous times since the Second World War. And whenever we cry for military solutions and we cheer at violence, we should keep in mind that the saying, who takes the sword will die by the sword. Everything else is handleable. We can easily find out ways of the climate crisis. I studied for 2 years engineering of renewable energies.
Mm-hmm.
So I know there are a lot of ways and a lot of cheap ways. And if we would spend all the money we spend on weapons, we would spend them for a global energy concept. We won't have any more problems with energy, not here, not in the third world, nowhere. But madmen with too much power, they are not handleable.
Yeah.
And that's what we have now, and not just on one side.
Yeah.
I have the feeling that the longer it goes, the madder they get on all sides.
Wow. And do you have any hope for the future, the modern world?
Yes, because
so
after every crisis, no matter what it was, life went on. And we wouldn't fly to the moon if we wouldn't have had the V2 bombing London. Without Wernher von Braun and his rockets, there wouldn't have been a Saturn V and no Neil Armstrong on the moon. So even the Second World War had things coming out that were positive. And the world managed to survive the 30 years of war, or the 100 years of war in the past between France and England, Spain and France, and then the whole Europe was on fire for the last 1,500 years. And we managed it always to survive. And life always went on. So I'm not afraid of that life wouldn't go on. But I'm sure life will get harder. And we will, in 10 years or 20 years, we will sit there and talk about the good old times where we had nothing better to do than chatting on the internet with friends and having an interview, and not being out trying to find something to eat or a shelter or whatever. But at last, life will go on.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
I know it's not very, very, very happy and then very love and light, but it's honest. I hope that tomorrow they will make a big peace contract, and that we will all dance hand in hand under the rainbow, and then the butterflies will be flying. But I don't see this coming. It's good to dream your world, but don't get lost in your dream. Be realistic and prepare yourself for the most realistic. There is the saying in English, expect the worst but hope for the best.
That's right. That's right. Lisa says, until we evolve back towards reconnection with the rhythms of nature, our planet, we will continue to take issue with the problems we have in the modern world. Climate change will push us to reconnect. I hope so. It's that, you're talking about the madness that's happening at the moment. And there's always been madness. And either somehow it ends, either people pull back or reason prevails. And it's the hubris that people think, I can do this, I can invade this country, or I can drop this bomb, or I can control, when in fact it never works. It's without lots and lots of damage. And you may say, well, was it worth it in the end? I mean, okay, you were talking about some developments happened as a result of the Second World War. Maybe they'd have happened anyway. I don't know. But that if my wish would be that reason will prevail in time, that people will, the agents in this, will pull back in time before it's too late. But
let's hope for the best.
Yep. Anyway, it's a pity you can't give us a song, a heavy metal number to rise us up before we finish.
What I really love, and when I have my stereo in my car on CD, and what motivates me the most is the song Don't Waste Your Time by Motorhead.
Okay, I must look it up.
Because we don't have time to waste. We have time to take us back, to enjoy the very moment. That's not wasting time. Wasting time is doing stupid things for stupid reasons with no outcome.
Right. I was listening to Willie Nelson. Do you know Willie Nelson?
Mm-hmm. Of course.
He's 89 and he's just produced, I don't know if it's his 90th album. I mean, he's an incredible man. And one was live every day as if it was your last, because one day it'll be true.
Yeah.
And it's about not wasting time. It's about living as fully as you can for as long as you can, and to make the most of these moments, so that if in 20 years' time we're sitting around saying, wasn't it great when we could chat online and now we're out scrambling for food, but that to make the most of what it is we have. Poppy says, I think it's like a pendulum. It moves all the way to both extremes, but in time, although we don't realize it, gradually but surely comes to the center balance. I hope, Poppy. And Tim says, it's easy to think of peace as an absence of war. I'm learning it's something we need to actively create and sustain. That is so true. And I suppose our Druid's prayer really speaks to that, that deep within the center of my being, may I find peace. It starts here before you share it, and then with your circle, and then radiate it. And I think that's really, really important. It comes back to us, yes. And Saab says, unfortunately, many of our aspiring social influencers have been conditioned, perhaps even hardwired, by constructs of rewards and expectations based on the extreme end of online gaming, and learnt behaviour taken from a broad generation of war and brutal killing video game playing desensitized sociopaths. Harsh but true. What do you think of that?
I can't agree with it. Me too. I'm still an online gamer. I played World of Warcraft for 20 years. I also sometimes just love to relax, to put on Counter-Strike and just running around with a gun in my hand and pointing as a sharpshooter. As long as as long as it is just a game, and it's not your only thing in life, I don't see any problems. I think it's very important to let out your aggression. I play ice hockey and I do some sword fighting, but not everyone has the possibility. So I prefer people to shoot down some NPCs in a video game than beating up people. And to me, it's an urban legend that video gamers are psychopaths or killers. It all started with the Columbine massacre, but you had school shootings way before internet, way before video games. You would always have the bullied kid that don't like Mondays and goes into the school and shoot them for no reason. But it's easier if society can blame the video game than society has to ask itself why it's making its youngsters mad.
That's right.
And to me, it's our society. It's the
Yeah.
permanent pushing, the permanent, you have to be the best in elementary school to get a good high school. You have to be the best in high school to get to a good college. You have to be the best in college to get to a good university. You have to be the best in university to get a good job. Get into the treadmill, run, 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 run. You will never reach the carrot, but run, donkey, run. That's what makes people going mad, taking out a gun and shooting their boss.
Mm-hmm.
Not sitting in front of a computer being a dwarf with an axe in the hand and then killing a dragon. My point of view.
Lindsay says she met her husband in World of Warcraft. My son was, I don't know if he still does, he's 23 now, but he spent his adolescence playing Counter-Strike and he was one of the best, so he told me. And he made friends from there and he's one of the gentlest guys I know. And Julia says, playing war games doesn't make people go to war. My kids find it a safe way to get rid of their aggression. Saba's come back. What does she say? Okay, she said she's majored on a thesis on this for years. But my observations are those of extreme end of the reality of hardline social introverts. Okay, but I know psychologically they've done research as well, so it probably depends on what your sample is. That I remember when I was in an undergrad in psychology, the study was on cartoons and aggression. Tom and Jerry fighting and Tom smashing Jerry, etc. Does that, and they talk. I mean, I think the conclusion was that it helped people release aggression. But then they did the famous Bobo doll experiment, where they had children in with a Bobo doll, and they had I think they were showing them a film of hitting the Bobo doll or hitting somebody, and then kids were doing that. So it's obviously imitating, but it's I suppose the rule's out. For decades and with conscious purpose, I channel aggression into making something positive happen for my clients. It works. That's what Judith says. Pat says, I wonder what video games Genghis Khan and Vlad the Impaler were playing to make them so violent. You don't have to be the best, but don't you have to be the best in the video games? That's And someone says medications are causing it too. That would be interesting data to see, says Kylina. I don't know if that's how I'm pronouncing your name properly. I know more women than men that play. And then Verdi, it says they were spending way too much time looking at violent woodcuts instead of making their own entertainment. That's Verdi's response to Pat's question about Vlad and Mr. Khan. That's very, very funny. And then Lisa says, I agree. It's more having to do with generations of disconnection from the natural world and dysfunction social structures. Okay, so Salve is referring to the darkest games that are underground. Okay, so.
Yeah, it's the same thing with the real dark, satanic Norwegian black metal. I don't think the Norwegian black metal made the kids go out and burn the churches down. They were just stupid kids. In the Middle Age, or in the Middle Age, you blamed books for making people doing crazy things. You will always find something where you can put a blame on. Mostly it's just, in my point of view, and from my experience with violence, when you don't know what to say, then you start being violent. So teach the people to express their thinking. Teach the people not to be afraid to speak honestly about their feelings. As long as people can express themselves, I think they will not be violent. I think. Of course, there are other examples, but from my point of view, violence mostly comes from a conflict in communication or miscommunication. But you don't learn communication at school.
Yeah,
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately, yes. Ricky has a very profound question. Do we blame the creators of hungry hippos for eating disorders? And then Pat personally says, yes, if it weren't for those bad hippo role models, I'd be slender and sylph-like. Okay. And then Stephanie says it's a controversial topic because of all of the diverse ways of living and thinking. There are extremists and everything. Absolutely. Some people do take it too far. Others play for the release and escapism. Art in any form is a great way to get emotions out of you, whether it's music, gaming, painting, reading. It should stay a safe space for each of us. I do think a lot of that, it comes down to frustration around life, unexpected, not enough love, unmet expectations. So you talk about that person trying to achieve, and the goalposts always shifting so that you never get what it is you've been promised or what it is you expect from life. And that can be really frustrating.
Yeah, and what just came to my mind, what we also must not forget, when we look from the prehistoric view, it's not that man made the weapon, but the weapon made man. It was not the Homo sapiens or the Neanderthalensis who forged the first weapon out of a bone. It's far older. The ability to create weapons just made human life possible. This was the ticket to climb down from the tree, as we had no claws, no big teeth, no big fur, no strong muscles. Our ancestors, before the Homo sapiens age, they made a weapon. So the aggression is in the blood of the human being. If you look at cave paintings, you don't see a painting of people sitting around a campfire and singing Beatles songs. You will see people with spears in their hand, hunting, killing each other, fighting. Violence was always there. And it's a beautiful idea and a very romantic idea that humanity can get over violence. But we can't get over breathing, we can't get over drinking and eating. And I think, as a weapon created our species, We will never get fully over violence.
I think on that note, you've had the last word. I think, but it comes back to just what you said earlier, is about recognizing what you are capable of. And when you are capable of that, that keeps you in check. That's one thing we can do. My last two questions are, what's your favorite season and what is your favorite festival to mark?
My favorite season, as somebody born in May, is spring. I love
Okay.
the spring. I love the renewing of everything. It's getting warm. I love asparagus. So it's my time of year, and strawberries. So everything I really love is growing on the fields. You have the birds singing again after the dark winter, and I have my birthday. So it's perfect time of year since my childhood. And on the other hand, the feast I love most is Samhain.
Okay.
But I'm not a big fan of celebrating Samhain. Samhain is the day when I go to the graveyard where most of my family
Okay.
lies. And when I just sit there, mostly I have some, well, usually, that was the word I looked for. Usually I have some incense sticks with me.
Yeah.
And then I just put them on the grave, lit them, sit in front of the grave, and tell my uncle, my grandfather, all those who raised me, what happened in the last year.
Oh,
How my
okay.
marriage is going, how my life is going, how my son is doing. Um, to me, Samhain is a very private, a very intimate
Okay.
feast, and I love it.
Wonderful. Thank you. We've gone over our 2-hour mark, and it's just been an absolute joy talking to you. And judging by the comments here, people have enjoyed it and gotten really involved in the conversation. So I just want to thank you so much, Björn. And it's been, I had no idea where this was going. So
Me either. It was a big, big honor. I have to say, I was really nervous and scared because I had no idea if I would have anything to tell the whole world because I'm just living my little normal life. Um, it was great where it went to, and thank you, thank you, thank you again. And I can't wait to see you again in person.
absolutely. And the funny thing is, when I did ask you, you thought, oh, I don't think I'll have anything to say. But most of my guests say that. And it's just amazing what comes out. So it's been such a joy. So you can say goodnight, and I'm going to send you backstage, and then we can just talk, because we can look at the comments, the ones, because there have been so many. We'll look at those
Okay.
afterwards. So if you can say goodbye, and then I'll send you through the veil into the other world.
Thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you for all the beautiful, beautiful reactions. And sleep well, dream well, gute Nacht, as we say in German, and
Well,
stay
guten
safe.
Morgen, and guten Morgen to the Australians, and
Yeah,
and the New Zealanders, anyone in the Southern Hemisphere. Anyway, listen, I'll see you in a moment. So I'll just say goodbye to everybody. So listen, thank you all for your wonderful comments. And of course, some of them were flying. So as usual, we don't get to read all of them. But it has just been a really, really enjoyable one. And thank you for all of your contributions as always. And I look forward to seeing you next week for another Fireside Chat. So until then, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and slán go fóill. Be well.